Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you.
It's time to bring light to this darkness on the Extreme Channel. Hey everybody, my name is Mr. X. Welcome to my channel. Here on the channel, a big part of it is high-end collectibles. Today, we're reviewing an old piece from XM Studios. The reason we're reviewing this piece is I recently made a top 10 XM Studio piece countdown. You can actually check out the video. And I left Darkness off the list. That's who this is. This is Darkness, and I probably shouldn't have. And I've never reviewed him, so I thought, why not? Let's review him because a lot of people don't know much about Darkness. So Darkness is a spirit that ties to a human host. And if you've never heard of him, we all can agree he looks badass. But his powers are even more badass. There's actually so many of them, I had to pull out my tablet to read them to you. So first of all, he has some mystical armor on him. And that gives him the power of invulnerability, superhuman strength, superhuman speed. He can shapeshift. He has superhuman stamina. Respiratory protection, so I guess he's COVID immune. Superhuman agility, superhuman senses, healing factor, shadow manipulation, reactive adaptation, and that is just the armor. Himself, he can bring out these tendrils, he can summon demon heads, he can do darkness constructs, kind of like Green Lantern, but he can do it with shadows. His abilities also include teleportation, immortality, heightened senses, extrasensory perception, reanimation. He can come back to life. He is immune to witchcraft, and he is omnipresent, so he is everywhere. And I know what you're thinking. That is badass. I want those powers. Well, he has two big weaknesses. Number one is sunlight, light. He's not a fan of the light. And number two is if he impregnates somebody, he dies when that child is born because the darkness passes on to the new one. So essentially, he can't risk getting laid. Now, as I said, this piece is made by XM Studios, and they made 999 of them, which is really surprising because for a lesser-known character, that's a pretty big risk. I mean, nowadays, they have some really well-known characters where the edition size is only 200 or 300. Now, they did make a companion piece for him. It's this one right here, quarter-scale Witchblade, which also I've never heard of this character, but I know she has ties with Darkness in a lot of the comic series, and she's also 1/4 scale, just like Darkness. So we're going to do a traditional review. We're going to leave out a few things like assembly because I can't even remember, but I know it's a whole bunch of pieces. But before we do, go ahead and comment on this video. Anytime you comment on a video, you get entered into a monthly drawing. And also, we're less than a month from giving away this statue. On our road to 20,000 subs, we are giving out this Mortal Kombat statue at 12,500 subs. All you have to do is make sure you've liked this video, you've subscribed to the channel, and you've hit that bell notification and stay tuned for that giveaway. So let's start as we always do with concept. And while I don't know a ton about Darkness, I did research a little bit, and I think a lot of this ties in really well to the concept. Even if you don't know the source material on him, it's awesome. Let's take a look. He has so many different things going on with this base. This is actually one of those pieces where you worry the base might actually take away from the character, but because he's lesser known, I don't think that's an issue. You have skulls, and you have creatures that he summoned. Not only are there about 4 or 5 different types of creatures, but there's multiple of each creature. Whether it's these little minions, some on the bottom, some towards the top. It's these huge dog-like creatures. It's these snakes or serpent heads, these tentacles that he's summoning. And he is in the middle of it all in a very action dynamic pose. I would say this is dynamic. You can catch him in the action. You see his hair flowing in the wind, and it just looks awesome. This is a true piece of art. I think they knocked it out of the park on every part. Like I said, a great thing about nailing a concept is if it looks good, whether you know the source material or not. And based on what I know of the source material, which isn't very much, I think they tied a lot of it into here. So well done to XM Studios on that. I think the concept's a 4 out of 5 or a W for a rail. Rail means not quite a grail, but a statue you'd really want. Now with design, one interesting thing is XM Studios loves switch outs. There are none on here. There are absolutely no switch outs. The closest thing you can get is this little guy is a proximity piece. So you do not have to display him. Also up top, check this out. This little wing minion right here, you can remove, but it does leave a little hole. And I actually, where I had him displayed, I had to have him removed for height purposes. And then also I took off this snake in the back. But I'm moving him to a new spot, one of 2 spots, I'm not sure yet. So hopefully I can display him in his full glory. There are some seam lines, though, on the back where the snakes go in. Here's a picture. Not really a big deal because they're not in the front, and this is a piece that I don't display as a centerpiece. We're going to talk about some of the stuff with paint and sculpt on the back. There's a lot of engineering going on here too, and I've never had any leaning issues. I've never had any breakage issues, although I think I broke a snake like when I first got him, but it was about 4 years ago, and I can't find where it was. So apparently I repaired him really well, or I just dreamed I broke it. Not a lot going on with the design, but because of that, I think it's a 4 out of 5. I would say one big negative part on the design is it is such a space hog for a character that's lesser known. Now, if you're a Darkness fan, this is probably a wet dream. And that's probably all he can have because he can't risk getting someone pregnant. Now, for the paint and sculpt, we're going to look at doing it via video because there's just so much stuff to cover. It's actually a little bit overwhelming. So check it out. Quick, I want to start with the proximity base and look at the actual base of it. This looks awesome. I love the texture and coloring on these rocks. The colors tie to a lot of the stuff we're about to talk about. Some larger rocks, maybe some magic. That's why there's purple in there. And then the little guy, so he's a mix between, I would almost say browns and a little bit of red or dark red on there. And look at his skin, very reptile-like, cracked, worn, kind of like a tough hide. And you're gonna see more of these guys on the actual normal piece as well. But look at that, yellow beady eyes, very cool. So I'm gonna start on the back of Darkness. At the base here, first thing, probably the weakest part of the paint and sculpt are these skulls. I'm not sure what they're meant to insinuate. They're much too big for human skulls, but they're not done the best. They're this gray color with kind of a hint of green in there, and there's no texture. They obviously don't look like real skulls, but most of them are at the back. And then you have a lot of other different things going on here, so let's focus on them one at a time. Let's look at the serpents, almost the snake-like creatures that he calls. Very scaly, this green color with some purple in the lines, which makes sense. You'll see when we get to the other side to see their faces. Very, very cool. And you see a lot of that wrapping around the bottom, and you assume that's still some of those same creatures. And then you have this other tentacle that's more of a brown, kind of makes you think of the earth. And this really isn't connected to anything, so I'm not sure which direction they were going, but it's at the back. Now, one really unique thing is that they didn't spare any expense at the back, but they didn't make it any of the stuff that you must see, or you lose out on it if you don't look. Now, one of the things you're going to see with Darkness, first let's look at his hair. I wish they would have differentiated the strands a little bit more. They didn't. I'll get over it. Little hints of blue in the black flowing hair, but it really flows well with his position, kind of this jumping, crouching position we talked about. Take a look at his suit. So you have a couple things going on. First, this green costume that has this textured, I don't even know what to call it, almost like this pattern. And then beneath him is kind of this gold scaly aspect just ripping out. Looks gold, some black shadowing all over. And also on his back here, you see these scales or these tentacles kind of punching out of his back. And they have this really unique texture you can see on them. So much crazy stuff going on. And let's start moving around to the front here. First, his arms. I love his arms. It's probably the coolest part. These metallic gauntlets that still have that gold scaly color that's breaking out. Makes him look extremely fierce. And you see a lot more metal on the front of Darkness as well. On his legs. So I assume all of this is part of the mystical armor, but specifically these, because this is where the jewels are tied onto. And then you have a few other jewels, red, blue, or red, green, yellow. And here, let's take a look at the anatomy. They did a great job on the anatomy. He's not overly buff, but he's very fit, very strong. And again, more and more rips through his green costume. And the green is varied from the rest of the greens we'll see in the statue. Let's look at his portrait really quick. Very Winter Soldier-ish, and his eyes look like some of the jewels. His forehead, the only skin showing, I wish I would have done a little bit better on that, but definitely something you can live without. So let's look at this minion we looked at earlier that's almost removable. This reminds me of the other minions. There's about 3 or 4 different types of creatures on here, and I like this guy a lot. And he's a kind of a mix between purples and browns. Not too much texture on him, but I like the fact he has wings. Let's look at the serpent's mouths. So this one's partially open, one's all the way closed, one's a little bit open, one's very, very open. This is a little cartoonish, but I think it flows well with the statue. I like the gold teeth. I like the purple on here. It complements the purple that's running down the side. Kind of a mix between like a sea creature and a snake. Some of the other creatures on here, kind of like the minions on the minion on the proximity base, but with his mouth closed. And here is, more, like I said, more of a brown color, but you can definitely see that reptilian type texture. And there's a couple more of these guys. That's what I love, is there's so much hidden stuff on here. Another one poking his head out of this beast. And I don't know what this beast is right here, but he looks badass. And he's more of a purple color, so I like how all the colors tie together. And look at this skin. Great detail on the skin. This kind of cracked leather hide type skin with the collar, the Rocky collar, butt kiss collar. And his mouth is very similar to the other creatures, but instead of purple gums and gold teeth, it's white teeth, off-white teeth, and pink gums. And here's another one right here. Very Men in Black, this is what this reminds me of. That's the beginning scene from Men in Black. Here's more of those skulls we talked about. So much different stuff going on. That's why I wanted to do the video on the paint and sculpt. It's almost too much to try and review and figure out what's going on, but pretty neat. So it's incredibly difficult for me to rate the paint and sculpt because there is just so much going on. I think I'm going to give the sculpt a 4 out of 5. I'm really impressed, especially when you look at some of the details on the creatures, our Darkness himself. However, the paint doesn't blow me away as much as the sculpt is, but it's still very good. So I think it's a 3 out of 5, right in the middle. Now, I don't look at value because he's an older piece. He originally retailed at 1,500 Singapore dollars, which is about 1,100 US, 1,200 US, plus shipping. It's a large box, a couple hundred for shipping, but you can get him for under that now. So it is a good value if you just want a beautiful, crazy looking, scary art piece of a Marvel character that you may not know much about. But one issue I have with him is he doesn't pair with anybody well. So I think I'm going to put him with like some one-off characters like Ghost Rider. I think that would be a good pairing, even though I don't know if there's any crossovers in the comics. So does this statue have the X Factor? I don't think it has the X Factor. It's not a 5 out of 5 statue, but it's very impressive for a character I don't have a lot of ties to. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 overall. I think this is a Rayo piece, despite the fact that it goes for less than retail. Nowadays, XM Studios has a made-to-order system, which I'm betting the made-to-order of him would have been like $150, and they would have been worth $2,000 to $3,000 each if that was the case, if not higher. Because everyone I know that's seen this in person is really impressed by it, whether they have ties to the character or not. All right, that's all I got today. I will be back tomorrow, as always. Make sure you've commented on the video. If you have not subscribed, hit that Mr. X logo. And make sure to hit the XM Studios playlist to see what other awesome statues that this company has come out with. Take care.